Imagine this. A presidential candidate snatched in broad daylight from a hotel in a friendly country.
Sounds like a thriller, right? But it actually happened.
Exactly. We're doing a deep dive today into the absolutely audacious 1973 abduction of Kim Dae-jung from Tokyo.
And our mission here, for you listening, is really to get to the heart of this. We want to understand it through the eyes of someone who was right there, investigating from the start.
So what sources are we working with?
Well, we've got some really compelling stuff. We're focusing quite a bit on Etsuyuki Sasa's recollections. He was the former director of the Foreign Affairs Division at Japan's National Police Agency.
So, boots on the ground, essentially.
Pretty much. His firsthand view, plus, parliamentary records, news articles from the time. It gives us a really informed perspective on this pretty stunning event. He wasn't just reading reports, he was involved right away.
And the background here is crucial too, right? Kim Dae-jung wasn't just anybody.
No, absolutely not. A major opposition figure in South Korea. He nearly won the presidency just a couple of years before against Park Chung-hee.
And things under Park were tense, to say the least.
Incredibly tense.
Yeah.
So Kim being in Japan as this prominent dissident, well, that already raised the stakes quite a bit.
Okay, so let's get into it. How did the authorities even find out this had happened? What were the first thoughts?
Well, interestingly, the first word didn't come through official police channels.
Oh.
Sasa was actually tipped off by the secretary of a politician, Takuma Utsunomiya. He was a Diet member for the LDP, the ruling party.
Okay, but why him?
That's the interesting part. Utsunomiya had this kind of unusual background. He'd been a communist earlier in his life, then joined the conservative LDP.
Huh. That's quite a switch.
It is. And apparently he knew Kim Dae-jung from back in their, shared communist movement days, even though that was in the past for both of them.
So that connection might be why his office flagged it.
It seems likely. Sasa certainly wondered why Utsunomiya was the one raising the alarm. Maybe those old connections or just his unique political position gave him some insight. It was definitely an odd starting point.
Yeah, a former communist in the ruling conservative party sounding the alarm about a South Korean opposition figure. Definitely adds a layer right away. So what were the initial theories then? Who did they think was behind it?
Well, the very first suspicion, surprisingly, landed on North Korean-affiliated Yakuza.
Gangsters. Why?
It was because of this odd bit of evidence they found at the scene. These lead recycled bullets.
Recycled bullets? What does that even mean?
Like homemade or crudely remade ammunition. The thinking was, professional spies, state agents, they'd use proper standard issue bullets.
Right, not something cobbled together.
Exactly. So these recycled bullets suggested maybe a less sophisticated group, like organized crime with maybe some North Korean links.
Okay, so initially it didn't scream state-sponsored. Where did this happen again? Sasa mentioned the Grand Hotel.
He mentioned the Grand Hotel initially. Yeah, maybe a slick of memory later on, but the actual abduction took place at the Grand Palace Hotel. Kim was meeting people in rooms 2211 and 2212.
And then
he was moved to room 2210, and the abductors apparently also used room 2215 during the whole operation.
Got it. So these recycled bullets point one way, but Sasa himself, he came to a very different conclusion pretty quickly, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Very quickly. He saw it almost immediately as a stunning state crime, a terrible sovereignty violation.
By who?
By the KCIA, the South Korean Central Intelligence Agency.
Wow.
Yeah, he just found it, almost unbelievable that a country calling itself a free democratic country would pull something like this off on Japanese soil.
Then he actually talked to his South Korean counterpart about this, right?
He did. He recounts this really direct and frankly quite revealing conversation with Kim Jae-kwon. Probably Kim Ki-won, actually, who's the South Korean public minister in Japan. Sort of his opposite number for Korean affairs.
And what happened in that conversation? Did the minister deny it?
Not at all. According to Sasa, Kim Jae-kwon just admitted it. Point blank. Said it was done.
Just like that, it was done.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But then came the justification, and this is where it gets really interesting. He argued it was actually for the sake of Japan.
How did he figure that?
His logic was, well, communism is a common enemy of Japan and Korea. He painted South Korea as this frontline shield, fighting communism for Japan.
And Kim Dae-jung?
He dismissed him as a very bad politician who leaned towards the North. So in his view, removing Kim was helping Japan fight communism.
That's quite a perspective. It really shows the gap in how they saw the situation.
A massive gap. Kim Dae-jung even suggested the KCIA and the Japanese police were, quote, comrades. Like they'd worked together against North Korean spies before, so why was Japan making such a big deal about sovereignty now?
Comrades! That's a jarring word choice there. Kidnapping someone isn't exactly routine police work.
Exactly. It highlights this fundamental disconnect. But, it wasn't like the entire Japanese government was unified on this either.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, Sasa noticed some, let's say, differences in relationships. He observed that the Japan Ground Self-Defense Forces Intelligence Unit, the JGSTF Intelligence Department, seemed to have a much closer relationship with the KCIA than his own police division did.
Closer how?
Just, more aligned. He got the sense that within the JGSTF, the military side, the view was kind of that Kim Dae-jung was an enemy.
Why would they think that? Because of his past?
Probably. During the Cold War, you have to remember, the Japanese military intelligence would have been strongly anti-communist. Kim's past associations, even if they were history, might have painted him that way in their eyes. It created this split, between the police seeing a crime against Japanese sovereignty and maybe parts of the military seeing something else.
Were there rumors about actual SDF involvement?
There were rumors, yeah. Sasa doesn't confirm them directly in what we looked at, but there was talk that maybe SDF intelligence helped the KCIA with surveillance before the abduction at the KCIA's request.
Wow. And a cover-up?
And, allegations of a cover-up afterwards, possibly run by the Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Masaharu Gotoda. Maybe even using money from the Cabinet Secret Fund.
What's that?
It's basically like a government slush fund for sensitive, classified stuff. The details aren't public. If it was involved, it suggests this was politically explosive at the highest levels.
So you've got the police trying to investigate a crime, and possibly elements in the Japanese defense world looking the other way, or maybe even helping. That sounds like a nightmare for Sasa's investigation.
Absolutely. And then you had the political pressure cooker in Tokyo itself.
Right. The National Diet. How did they react?
Oh, the opposition went ballistic. The socialists, communists, Komeito, they were all condemning it, calling it a grave violation of sovereignty, demanding answers, demanding a full investigation.
So Sasa was right in the middle of that storm.
Smack bang in the middle. Even though he was technically not that high-ranking director of the Foreign Affairs Division, he got hauled before Diet committees constantly. He said it was over 300 times.
300? That's insane.
Yeah, sometimes multiple committees in one day. Just grilling him.
He mentioned a specific confrontation, didn't he, with a Komeito member?
He did, yeah. A pretty colorful run-in with Mr. Kuroyanagi. This Diet member actually accused the Tokyo police flat out of colluding with the KCIA on the abduction.
Whoa, that's a serious accusation. Did he have proof?
He claimed he had witnesses, said they could identify the police officers involved, demanded Sasa parade his entire Public Security Bureau staff for these supposed witnesses to look at.
Which is obviously ridiculous.
Completely unreasonable. Sasa shut that down pretty firmly, pointed out the absurdity. He even mentioned, kind of cheekily, that Kuroyanagi tried to pull rank based on age, but Sasa pointed out he was actually a year older.
Huh. Did that help?
Maybe broke the tension a bit. Sasa also apparently knew Kuroyanagi used to be a boxer, mentioned it, maybe just to subtly, remind him to be respectful. It shows the kind of intense, sometimes personal pressure the investigation was under.
Incredible. So, navigating all that political chaos, what did the actual police work manage to find out? What were the key breakthroughs?
Well, despite the politics, they did make some solid progress. They identified the getaway car. It was a gray Skyline initially reported, but more specifically, a cream-colored Skyline 2000. Got the license plate too. 55 Moth 2077.
And who owned it?
It belonged to a South Korean consul based in Yokohama.
Ah, so a direct link to the consulate.
A direct link. And based on their analysis, the police figured Kim was probably smuggled out of Japan on a high-speed boat, something doing maybe 40 knots, likely leaving from the Kansai region near Osaka or Kobe.
And Sasa mentioned a darker initial plan.
Yes, this is chilling. The police concluded the original plan was almost certainly assassination. The idea was to weight Kim Dae-jung's body down and sink him in the East China Sea, just make him disappear forever.
God, that's horrific. It just takes this whole thing to another level. But that didn't happen, obviously. He survived. Why?
Well, Sasa firmly believed the U.S. intervened, the CIA specifically.
CIA stepped in.
How? He mentions testimony from people who were supposedly on that boat. They reported seeing a helicopter suddenly appear, shining a powerful searchlight down on them.
A helicopter? Out at sea?
Yeah. And apparently it wasn't just watching. It issued a warning. told the crew not to dump the body overboard.
So the U.S. knew it was happening and stopped it.
That's Sasa's inference. He felt the U.S. was genuinely surprised, maybe even shocked, by how far the KCIA was willing to go. That level of violence.
So it sounds like a potential disaster was averted, maybe thanks to the U.S., but even with the police finding the car, figuring out the likely escape, identifying suspects, there wasn't really any legal follow-through in Japan, was there?
No, that's the really frustrating part, especially for Sasa.
What happened?
Essentially, a political settlement was reached between the Japanese government, the LDP, and Park Chung-hee's regime in South Korea.
And what did that settlement do?
It basically stopped the Japanese criminal investigation in its tracks, at least regarding the individuals involved. The key figure the police wanted to question was Kim Dong-won, likely Kim Byung-chan, a first secretary at the South Korean embassy, identified as a KCIA agent.
And they couldn't question him.
Nope. He and the other implicated consular staff were quickly recalled back to Seoul, out of reach.
So diplomatic immunity, essentially, followed by a recall.
Exactly. And Sasa was furious about this. He saw it as a massive failure of Japan's judicial independence, choosing politics, choosing smooth relations with South Korea over the rule of law.
Did he compare it to other situations?
He did. He pointed out how reluctant Japan often was to demand extradition for other criminals, like members of the Japanese Red Army faction involved in terrorism abroad. He felt this settlement set a bad precedent.
Prioritizing diplomacy over justice.
That was his view, that it was pragmatic maybe in the short term to avoid a huge diplomatic crisis, but it undermined the legal system.
And this feeling, this lack of closure, it stuck with him, didn't it?
Oh, definitely. He talks about meeting Henry Kissinger later on, when Kissinger was U.S. Secretary of State.
And what did Kissinger say?
Apparently, Kissinger concerned that Kim Dong-won, the KCIA guy, was just living freely back in Seoul. Kissinger even supposedly suggested Japan should demand his extradition.
But Japan didn't.
Never did. Despite that nudge from Kissinger, despite Sasa pushing behind the scenes, no formal request was ever made.
Why not?
Sasa felt it was part of a pattern. He criticized the Japanese government for having a, quote, too compromising attitude towards terrorists and just generally failing to pursue extradition when things got politically tricky.
And the police files?
Still classified, indefinitely. All that evidence the police gathered, locked away. So the full picture remains, officially hidden.
Layers upon layers of secrecy. There was also that mention of Anne's house. What was that about?
Right, Anne's house. It's generally believed Daos refers to room 302 in an apartment building called Excel Okamoto over in Kobe.
And who used it?
Likely Consul Park Jung-hwa from the Osaka Korean Consulate General. It seemed to be some kind of operational base or safe house.
And there was proof linking it to the consulate.
Yes. Another Diet member, Shizuko Sasaki, did some digging. She got hold of phone records for that apartment and confirmed the phone line was registered to the Korean Consulate in Kobe. Just another piece linking official South Korean personnel in Japan to the whole affair.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. This deep dive into the Kim Dae-jung incident, it really paints a picture of a shocking violation of sovereignty, a kidnapping by a foreign spy agency on Japanese soil.
Absolutely, and it threw into sharp relief these huge differences in perspective between Japan and South Korea on security, on sovereignty, even divisions within Japan's own government.
The police investigation uncovered a lot: the car, the likely plan, key suspects.
But it was ultimately shut down by politics. That political settlement just stopped it cold.
Leaving this real sense of unfinished business, of justice denied, especially for the investigators like Sasa.
Exactly. The whole incident is just this stark, kind of sobering example of how messy international relations can get, where sovereignty, politics, and the pursuit of justice all collide.
So here's something to think about for you listening. When a country finds itself unable, or maybe unwilling, to fully investigate a major crime on its own territory because of political pressure or diplomatic concerns, what does that really mean? What does it tell us about how international relations actually work and how achievable justice really is when powerful interests clash?